ladies and gentlemen, there are some occasions when it is good to take stock of the position, to see how far wrong we have been, or how far right we have been, see where we stand. I claim that at present we have proved right in Europe, in Africa, and in the social policies which depended on our principles in those questions. And we have been right, not because we were guided by any peculiar vision or forethought. We have been guided above all by the principle, by a belief in the underlying unity of Europe. You may have observed that nothing really happens until the old show breaks down. In Africa, another place in which our policies have been so completely and entirely justified, I won't say triumphantly, because that's not a word to use in a situation of tragedy, but have been completely justified. Nothing could be done. Nobody'd listen. Yards of nonsense were turned out until the plain truth was proved. This time, alas, very often in blood and in a hurry. We stood throughout again in Africa the perfectly clear-cut principle for which we were tremendously abused with every sort of foolish and disgusting lie. It was said we wanted to persecute the blacks, that we were racialists who wanted to put our people on top of one another, of another people. All those disgusting and foolish lies were told about. We said, of course, as I always say, naturally we believe in our own race. Any man or woman worth anything believes in his own race as he believes in his own family. But because you believe in your own race or in your own family doesn't mean you want to injure other races or other families. How often have I said a father of a family should know that it's his first duty in nature to look after his own children? But that doesn't mean that he wants to hurt or to injure other children. On the contrary, you will do them any good turn that you can. And our attitude was always the same. Our first duty was to our own people, our British and European peoples. But also, in addition to that, of course, we would do what we could to help other people as well. And who doesn't want to feed the hungry? Of course we should feed the hungry and the suffering of the world. Let's talk less and let's get on with the doing of it. Let us use the European surplus for that purpose. And at the same time, we can keep a healthy agricultural population on our own land, in our own countries. We can feed the hungry of the world, and we can defeat the policies of communism. But we pointed out the lines of policy then being pursued were bound to end in disaster. They talked of what they called multiracialism, which was simply a universal mix-up. Take humanity, put it in a bag, shake it together, and heaven knows what would come out. They wanted to get rid of what existed, all the little gray people of the world who hate the beautiful diversity of human development. They always want to get rid of the natural, the noble and the beautiful. They wanted to get rid of it. They wanted to make all nature as gray as themselves. It was their deep instinct. We were always opposed to that. We said, no, it won't work, and it's undesirable that it should work. We can live in peace and friendship side by side in separate nations and separate developments, but we cannot have the mix-up of peoples and races who are widely different and divergent. It will lead to nothing but trouble. It will lead to nothing but trouble. This policy of mixture, what does it really mean? It doesn't mean freedom. It doesn't mean brotherhood or any of the cant and humbug which is taught. That is just the mask for some of the vilest forces on earth to exploit the peoples in the future as they have done in the past. Every one of us in this hall was old enough to see before the war. Every one of you know what happened. How the financial forces in the 30s went into these backward countries, into India within the empire, into Hong Kong, into Japan, into China, and exploited these peoples to produce cheap, sweaty goods which ruined the great industries of Britain and of Europe, which put Lancashire out of business in the cotton trade, Yorkshire out of business in the woolen trade. And these poor devils of coolies were exploited for a wage of a few shillings a week. For what purpose? To enable the City of London and Wall Street, New York, to make fatter profits by sweating them and helping us. That is why it was done. That was the whole purpose. And with what result? China thrown into the arms of communism. The largest population in the world simply tossed as a present to communism. Because if you treat people like that, it's the only possible result. If there's no one to save them, no one to help them, and they've simply been ground into poverty and sweating and exploitation, what can you expect except they go communist as they did? And all these countries which have been exploited, thrown and tossed aside by finance, and now becoming the victims of communism. So finance seeks fresh fields of exploitation. Where do they turn? When the old people are exhausted. When many a poor laborer has died of consumption and of other horrible diseases in their sweatshops, or when they're exhausted fields of exploitation, where do they turn now? New pastures, new forests, fresh virgin land. And then you erect a Union Jack or another flag of Europe, and under that flag, where you allow these things to happen as we have done in the past, and those poor devils that have been sweated and exploited in Africa, like the other poor devils in China, India, and Japan, a great new field for sweatshops to be opened up, so that these new industries which we're creating in Britain today will be destroyed as the old industries were. Simplified, rationalized machinery with a few white surveyors, and then the masses of cheap-colored labor torn off the land and taken into the sweatshops to work and labor and cough their guts out with tuberculosis until they too are thrown on the scrap heap of the sweatshops. Is that worthy of Britain? Is that to be the future of Europe? And is this competition to be organized within our European Brotherhood, bringing in these sweat fields in Africa into our Europe civilization so that the financial power in one European country can use it against the financial power in another? All the great financial central power of the world, now shifted from the City of London to Wall Street, New York, shall be able, on the mass of money, of wealth, and of power which it brings to it, again and again to exert its influence in politics, until, as you see today, it is childish nonsense to say that a British government rules Britain. It's nothing to do with British government or the British people. The government of the world is the financial government